It was one of those days where the rain fell in relentless sheets, soaking everything in sight. Ryan Reynolds was sitting in his car at a red light, enjoying the peaceful rhythm of the rain when something caught his eye. A delivery driver, drenched to the bone, was struggling to balance a stack of packages that threatened to topple at any moment. Ryan didn't think twice. He grabbed his umbrella and stepped out into the storm, but what he would discover about the driver would leave him stunned. The rain was relentless, a cold, unyielding torrent that seemed determined to soak everything in its path. Ryan Reynolds pulled his hood over his head and hurried toward the struggling delivery driver, who was precariously balancing a stack of packages while water streamed down his face. "Hey, need a hand?" Ryan called out over the sound of the downpour. The driver turned, startled, his eyes widening when he recognized Ryan. "Oh no, I'm fine," he stammered, though the wobbling stack of boxes told a different story. "I don't want to bother you." Ryan grinned, his trademark charm shining through despite the rain. "You're not bothering me. I was just sitting in my car trying to figure out if I could pull off another superhero role. Turns out, I can be a delivery sidekick too." Before the driver could protest further, Ryan grabbed the top few packages from the stack, steadying the load. The driver blinked, clearly unsure of how to handle the situation. "Thanks," he mumbled, his voice barely audible over the rain. "I've been running behind all day." "No worries," Ryan said, falling into step beside him as they made their way to a nearby building. Rain like this can throw anyone off. As they walked, Ryan couldn't help but notice the driver's clothes, soaked and clinging to his frame, and the way his shoes squished with every step. "Do they at least give you rain gear for days like this?" Ryan asked, his tone light but his concern genuine. The driver shrugged. "Not really, I just try to push through. Gotta keep delivering." Ryan nodded, though the sight of the man's exhaustion tugged at him. There was something about the driver's determination, something quietly resilient, that struck a chord. When they reached the building, Ryan helped the driver stack the packages neatly in the lobby. "There you go," Ryan said, brushing the rain off his jacket. "Anything else I can do?" The driver hesitated, then shook his head. "You've already done more than enough. Thanks again, Mr. Reynolds." "Call me Ryan," he said with a smile. "And hey, don't let this rain get you down. You're doing great." The driver nodded, offering a small, grateful smile. But as Ryan turned to leave, something about the encounter stuck with him. There was more to this man's story. He could feel it. Back in his car, Ryan couldn't shake the image of the drenched delivery driver. Something about the man's quiet determination and weary demeanor tugged at him. He had seen plenty of people hustling through tough situations, but this felt different. Ryan glanced at the rearview mirror, the rain still pelting his windshield. He thought about how easily he could just drive off and go about his day, but his gut told him to stick around. Pulling out his phone, Ryan searched for nearby delivery hubs. "Maybe I can send this guy some dry clothes or something," he muttered to himself. But as he scrolled through the results, an idea struck him. Why not find out more about him directly? Moments later, Ryan spotted the delivery driver heading back to his van, struggling with the wet packages and fumbling with his keys. Without overthinking it, Ryan stepped out of his car and jogged over, holding an umbrella above them both. "Hey, wait up!" Ryan called out. The driver turned, surprise flashing across his face. "You're still here?" Ryan grinned. "What can I say? I've got a thing for unfinished stories. Thought maybe you could use a coffee or a dry jacket or both." The driver chuckled softly, though his exhaustion was evident. "I appreciate it, but really, you've already done enough." Ryan tilted his head, his gaze sharp but kind. "Humor me. Everyone's got a story, and I've got time." The driver hesitated, then sighed. "All right, there's a coffee shop around the corner, but I'm not that interesting, I promise." "Let me be the judge of that," Ryan said, gesturing toward the coffee shop. As they walked, Ryan couldn't help but notice the subtle signs of wear and tear on the man's appearance. His shoes, his coat, the heavy bags under his eyes. This wasn't just someone having a bad day, this was someone carrying the weight of something much bigger. Inside the warm coffee shop, Ryan ordered 2 large coffees and handed one to the driver. "All right," he said, leaning back in his chair with an easy smile. "So, what's your name, and what's your story?" The driver hesitated, staring into his cup, as if the steam could somehow give him an answer. Finally, he looked up, his voice quiet but steady. "Name's James. And my story? Let's just say it's not what you'd expect. Ryan leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. All right, James, he said with a friendly smile. Hit me with it. What's the unexpected part? James hesitated, his fingers tapping nervously against the side of his coffee cup. He seemed to be weighing whether or not to share, but Ryan's disarming presence made it hard to hold back. I wasn't always a delivery driver, James finally said, his voice low. A few years ago, well, I guess you could say I was on top of the world. I ran a successful tech company. Ryan raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. A tech company? That's a bit of a leap from deliveries in the rain. James chuckled bitterly. Yeah, you could say that. We specialized in software for small businesses. It started as a passion project, but it took off faster than I could have imagined. Suddenly I had employees as investors and deals worth millions. Ryan whistled softly. Sounds like you were living the dream. For a while, James said, nodding. But things went south. My business partner, someone I trusted completely, started embezzling funds. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. The company folded, the lawsuits drained my savings, and I lost everything. Ryan's easy smile faded as he listened, his heart sinking. That's brutal, he said quietly. And no one had your back? James shook his head. Not really. People disappear when you're no longer useful to them. My wife couldn't handle the stress, so she left. The house, the cars, it all went. I ended up here, doing deliveries to make ends meet. Ryan sat back in his chair, letting James's story sink in. He'd seen plenty of headlines about people losing it all, but hearing it firsthand was different. And you've been doing this ever since? He asked. James nodded. Yeah, it's not glamorous, but it pays the bills, barely. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain continued to drum against the windows of the coffee shop, but inside, the silence was heavy. Finally, Ryan broke it. That's one hell of a story, James, he said, but it's not over yet. James looked up, confused. What do you mean? Ryan leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with determination. I mean, you've already survived the worst. Now it's time to figure out how to rebuild. James stared at Ryan, his brow furrowed. Rebuild? That's easier said than done, he said with a bitter laugh. I don't even know where to start. Ryan leaned back, his playful demeanor replaced by genuine seriousness. You said you built a company once. That takes talent, vision, and guts. Those things don't just disappear because life threw you a curveball. James shook his head. That's in the past. I can't compete with the tech world now. It's evolved, and I've fallen behind. Ryan's lips curved into a knowing smile. That sounds like something a defeated guy would say. And you don't strike me as that guy. You're still here, hustling in the rain, doing what you have to do. That's not defeat. That's resilience. James blinked, the words hitting harder than he expected. But where do I even begin? It's not like I have resources or connections anymore. Ryan tapped his fingers on the table, his mind racing. Okay, let's start small. Do you still have ideas, things you're passionate about? James hesitated, then nodded slowly. I've been working on something in my spare time. It's just sketches and notes, though. Nothing concrete. That's a start, Ryan said, his grin returning. And lucky for you, I happen to know a few people who might want to hear about those ideas. James stared at him, disbelief written all over his face. You'd do that? For me? Of course, Ryan said without hesitation. Everyone needs a hand sometimes, and who knows? Maybe this is your second chance. James sat back, his mind whirling. The idea of rebuilding his career felt impossible just hours ago. But now, sitting across from someone who believed in him, it didn't seem so far-fetched. Ryan leaned forward, his tone light but firm. But there's one condition. James raised an eyebrow. What's that? You don't give up on yourself, Ryan said. Not ever. Deal? James hesitated for a moment, then extended his hand. Deal. Ryan shook his hand firmly. All right, let's get started. Over the next few days, Ryan threw himself into helping James regain his footing. He started by getting James the basics, new clothes, better shoes, and a laptop to replace the outdated one James had been using to jot down his ideas. Ryan insisted it wasn't charity. It's an investment, he said with a wink. And I always back good investments. With the essentials taken care of, Ryan encouraged James to share the sketches and notes he'd mentioned. Hesitantly, James opened his notebook, filled with diagrams, flowcharts, and scribbled concepts. Ryan's eyes widened as he flipped through the pages. "James, this is genius," he said, holding up one of the pages. "You've already done so much groundwork. This isn't just an idea, it's a plan." James blushed, shrugging modestly. "It's just stuff I've been working on in my spare time. I didn't think it was good enough to go anywhere." "Well, I think you're wrong," Ryan said firmly, "and I'm pretty sure the people I know are going to agree." True to his word, Ryan reached out to his network. Within days, he had set up a meeting with a venture capitalist who specialized in supporting startups. Ryan promised to be there for moral support, though he joked about being just the charming guy in the corner. When the day of the meeting arrived, James sat nervously in the waiting room, clutching his notebook like a lifeline. Ryan sat beside him, exuding his usual confidence. "Relax," he said with a grin. "These people love hearing fresh ideas, and you've got something great. Just be yourself." James took a deep breath, nodding. "Thanks, Ryan, for all of this." Ryan clapped him on the shoulder. "Don't thank me yet. Go in there and show them why you're worth investing in." The meeting went better than either of them could have imagined. James presented his ideas with passion and clarity, and by the end of the pitch, the investors were nodding enthusiastically. They agreed to provide funding for a pilot project, giving James the chance to bring his vision to life. As they left the office, James looked at Ryan, his face a mix of disbelief and gratitude. "I can't believe this is happening," he said. "It's like I'm dreaming." Ryan smiled. "It's not a dream, James. It's you proving to yourself, and everyone else, that you've still got it." With funding secured, James dove headfirst into building his pilot project. He rented a small workspace and assembled a modest team, mostly friends and former colleagues who believed in his vision. The energy in the room was electric. James was no longer just delivering packages in the rain. He was crafting something meaningful again. Ryan stayed involved, checking in regularly and offering words of encouragement. "You're like the scrappy underdog in every movie," Ryan joked one day during a visit to the workspace. "And trust me, everyone loves rooting for the underdog." James laughed, but his gratitude was evident. "I don't think I'd have made it this far without you." Ryan shrugged. "I just gave you a nudge. The rest was all you." As the pilot project took shape, James's confidence grew. He started pitching his concept to potential clients, showcasing how his software could streamline operations for small businesses. The response was overwhelmingly positive, and soon he had a handful of early adopters eager to test his product. One afternoon, as Ryan and James grabbed lunch at a small cafe near the workspace, James leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "You know, it's funny," he said. "A few weeks ago, I thought my story was over. I'd accepted that I'd be stuck in that delivery van forever. And now?" Ryan asked, sipping his coffee. "Now, I feel like it's just beginning," James said with a smile. "I'm not just rebuilding my career, I'm rebuilding myself." Ryan nodded, his own smile widening. "That's what second chances are all about." As they walked back to the workspace, James paused, looking up at the clear blue sky. "I want to pay this forward," he said suddenly. "When this company takes off, I want to use it to help people like me, people who've fallen through the cracks but still have something to give." Ryan clapped him on the back. "Now, that's a plan I can get behind. Let me know when you need a poster boy for your Underdog Success Stories campaign." James laughed, but the idea stayed with him. For the first time in years, he felt not just hopeful, but driven. He wasn't just building a company, he was creating something that could make a real difference. Weeks turned into months, and James's pilot project began gaining traction. The small businesses testing his software raved about its efficiency and ease of use, and word started to spread. What had once been a notebook of scattered ideas was now a fully functioning platform that was changing the way businesses operated. One evening, Ryan dropped by James's workspace, carrying a box of donuts as a surprise for the team. The room was alive with energy. Keyboards clacked, whiteboards were filled with notes and diagrams, and laughter echoed as the team worked late into the night. "Looks like a proper startup in here," Ryan said, setting the donuts on a table. "How's my favorite underdog, CEO?" James grinned, wiping his hands on a rag after adjusting a piece of equipment. "Exhausted, but in the best way possible. We just onboarded 5 new clients this week." Ryan let out a low whistle. "5? That's incredible, James. You're officially killing it. It's not just me, James said, gesturing to his team. These guys believe in what we're building. That's what keeps me going. Ryan nodded, his eyes scanning the room. You've created something amazing here, but I have a feeling you're just getting started. James laughed, but his expression grew serious. You're right. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about paying it forward. Once we're stable, I want to launch a mentorship program for people trying to rebuild their lives. I want to give them the chance I got. Ryan's face lit up. That's what I'm talking about. Turning your success into someone else's opportunity. That's the kind of legacy that matters. Just as they were talking, one of James's team members walked over, holding a tablet. James, you've got to see this, she said excitedly. Our platform just hit 1,000 active users. James stared at the screen, his jaw dropping. 1,000? Are you serious? Dead serious, she said with a grin. We did it. The team erupted into cheers, and Ryan raised his hands in mock celebration. 1,000 users? I feel like I should give a motivational speech or something. James laughed, but the moment was overwhelming. He looked around at his team, the platform he'd built, and the man who had helped him believe in himself again. For the first time in years, he felt like he was truly back on his feet. Thanks, Ryan, James said quietly, his voice filled with emotion. For everything. Ryan clapped him on the shoulder, his grin as wide as ever. Like I said, you did the work. I just provided the snacks. With the company thriving, James turned his focus to the next phase of his vision, helping others who were struggling just as he once had. True to his word, he began laying the groundwork for a mentorship program designed to support people trying to rebuild their lives. The program would offer guidance, resources, and training to those who needed a second chance. One afternoon, James called Ryan to share his progress. We've got our first group lined up, he said excitedly. 10 people, all from different walks of life. Single parents, veterans, people who've been through tough times. I can't believe this is really happening. Ryan's voice on the other end of the line was full of pride. That's incredible, James. You've officially gone from underdog to hero. When's the big launch? Next week, James said. It's going to be small at first, but I'm hoping we can grow it over time. I wouldn't miss it for the world, Ryan said. Send me the details. I'll be there. The launch event was held in a local community center, modest but packed with energy and hope. James stood at the front of the room, addressing the group of mentees with a mix of humility and confidence. He shared his story, not as a tale of triumph, but as proof that no matter how far someone falls, they can rise again with the right support. I know what it's like to feel like the world has left you behind, James said, his voice steady. But I also know that when someone believes in you, it can change everything. This program isn't just about learning skills. It's about believing in yourself again. The room erupted into applause, and James felt a swell of pride. As he stepped off the stage, Ryan was waiting for him, clapping louder than anyone else. You crushed it, James, he said, pulling him into a quick hug. This is just the beginning. James smiled, his heart full. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Ryan shook his head. You were always capable, James. You just needed a little reminder. The mentees approached James after the event, their faces lit with hope and gratitude. One young man, barely out of his teens, shook James's hand firmly. Your story gives me hope, he said. If you can come back from what you went through, maybe I can too. James nodded, his voice filled with quiet conviction. You absolutely can. The mentorship program quickly gained momentum. The first group of mentees began showing remarkable progress. One started a small landscaping business, another went back to school to study graphic design, and one woman landed a steady job after years of struggling to find work. James was overjoyed to see their growth, knowing that his own struggles had paved the way for something bigger. Ryan continued to support James from the sidelines, attending events and cheering on the program's success. During one of their catch-up meetings, Ryan leaned back in his chair, a satisfied grin on his face. You realize what you've done, right? He said. This isn't just a business anymore. It's a movement. James laughed, shaking his head. A movement might be a stretch, but it's definitely bigger than I expected. Watching these people rebuild their lives, it's more fulfilling than anything I've ever done. Ryan nodded. That's because it's real. You're not just building a company, you're building hope. And trust me, that's something the world can't get enough of. As the weeks passed, word about the program began to spread. Local news outlets picked up the story, framing it as a tale of resilience and redemption. Headlines like, "Former tech CEO turns life around, creates program to help others," started circulating online, drawing attention from people across the country. One day, James received an email from a major tech conference inviting him to speak as a keynote presenter. They wanted him to share his journey from a struggling delivery driver to a successful entrepreneur and mentor. When James told Ryan about the invitation, Ryan's face lit up. "That's huge!" he exclaimed. "You have to do it." James hesitated, his nerves getting the better of him. "I'm not exactly a public speaker," he admitted. "What if I mess up?" Ryan smirked. "You're talking to a guy who's made a career out of messing up lines and making it work. Trust me, you'll be great. Just be yourself." At the conference, James stood on a brightly lit stage, his heart pounding as he looked out at the sea of faces. But as he began to speak, the nerves faded. He shared his story with honesty and humility, emphasizing the importance of perseverance, community, and the power of second chances. By the end of his speech, the audience gave him a standing ovation. Ryan, sitting in the front row, clapped the loudest, shouting, "That's my guy!" The standing ovation marked a turning point for James. His story of redemption and resilience resonated far beyond the tech conference. Emails flooded in from people inspired by his journey, many sharing their own struggles and asking for advice. Others wanted to contribute to his mentorship program, offering funding, resources, and opportunities for expansion. Back at his workspace, James sat with Ryan, sifting through the messages. "This is incredible," James said, his voice filled with awe. "I never thought my story would impact so many people." "That's the power of honesty and heart," Ryan said with a grin. "People see themselves in you, James. They see what's possible." The mentorship program grew rapidly, expanding to multiple cities and reaching hundreds of people. James became a symbol of hope for those who had fallen on hard times, proving that no matter how far someone falls, they can rise again with determination and support. One evening, after a long day of work, James and Ryan sat on the rooftop of James's office building, watching the city lights twinkle below. James held a framed photo of his first team of mentees, a memento of how far they had all come. "I don't know how to thank you, Ryan," James said, his voice quiet but sincere. "You didn't just help me rebuild my life, you helped me find my purpose." Ryan smirked, sipping his coffee. "All I did was give you a push. The rest, that's all you." James smiled, his expression thoughtful. "I want to make sure no one ever feels as lost as I did. If I can help even one person believe in themselves, then everything I went through will have been worth it." Ryan raised his coffee cup in a toast. "Here's to making the world a little brighter, one second chance at a time." James clinked his cup against Ryan's, his heart full. As they sat under the stars, James knew that his story wasn't just about redemption. It was about creating a legacy that would continue to inspire and uplift others long after he was gone. This story reminds us that one act of kindness can spark a chain reaction of change. Have you ever witnessed or experienced a moment where someone's belief in you made all the difference? Share your story in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring tales.